give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
God knows. I am reincarnated. I was stargazing. Life goes on. I need her, my babies. Woke up looking for the broccoli. High key, keep a horn on me. That could my seat. IP ownership. The blueprint is by me. Mr. Get Off, I get off at my feet. Couldn't try me in a tri-state buddy pass, but I get them splashed till he hydrated.
The Black Pack.
No, Spook
You are
Town.
listening to KBLA Talk 1580. I am your host, Adrianne Shropshire. And, you know, as I was preparing for the show today and thinking that all the news was bad, and trying to figure out, like, you know, which bad news will I report out on today, I got a text message, Andy. And it said, Kendrick just dropped. And I thought, oh my God, Kendrick actually knows when the people need what they need. And he gives it to us, right? So Andy, what is your, I know you listened to it, but you and I were texting earlier. I had already listened to the whole thing twice. What are you feeling on which tracks are you feeling? Because I know it's almost everything for me.
You know, it felt like an event, right?
Yeah.
So I obviously woke up, you know, first thing I do is check my phone, go on social media. I might have scrolled up maybe 3 times and boom, one of the hip hop websites that I follow was like, Dot just dropped an album, right? And I'm like, oh, snap.
I know.
So I'm like, let me go on Tidal. As soon as I open Tidal, boom, right there, right?
Yeah.
And immediately the text messages.
Right.
I got a text from you. I got a text from the homie Rob. I got a text from, you know, my little group or whatnot. And it was just like, it felt like an event. It's been a while since like an album has dropped and it felt like an event.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm glad the album is dope. I will say it's better than his last project. This song right here, Squabble Up.
Yep. I love it. That might be mine right now.
I'm with you. I mean, you know, I know a lot of people used to talk about Kendrick would never drop bops, right? Like party records. You have to think in order to, you know, you have to be in a certain mind state to, you know, listen to Kendrick. Kendrick gave you some bops on this record.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you're going to dance, you're going to think, and he's definitely pushing the forward, you know, pushing the culture forward. It
just felt good. I mean, it's been 2 weeks of bad news and like just, you know, like turning it on, you know, the first track. I mean, all of it. It was all of it felt good. And I'm, you know, like I'm actually in a good mood. And I know that there's all kinds of, you know, not great things happening in the world. And also this album is everything right now. So you know, K-Dot may never hear me and you talking about this, but let me just say thank you to Kendrick Lamar for the music, for the inspiration, for the joy, which he talks about, right? He's not going to let nobody take his joy, and for his poetry and all the things. Because in this moment, there is, you know, we talked last week, I think, Andy, about a bill that was in the U.S. House of Representatives that Republicans put forward that is essentially, I think we're calling it the nonprofit killer right now, right? A bill that would, you know, go after nonprofit organizations, our organizations, community organizations, movement organizations, advocacy organizations that do the work to advocate and protect our communities, would go after them. That the Department of the Treasury could go after them without any reason or explanation really at all, and eliminate people's 501c3 status. And it was not just that it was the Republicans who were doing it, but 52, I think I said to you all last week, 52 Democrats supported the bill. And so so it failed, but it came back up again this week for another vote. And I just want to say to folks, like, in this moment where people are uncertain what they can do, are uncertain if we, if we have power, if we can make a difference, if things work, I want people to know that, there were 52 Democrats who supported the bill last week. The vote happened yesterday, and there were only 15 Democrats who voted yes. So it went from 52 Democrats saying yes to essentially squashing dissent. The bill would have allowed the incoming president, right, and his administration to go after anyone who disagreed with them, right, who disagreed with the government, who protested against the government, and people called. People called their representatives. We were telling people, giving out the number, you got to call your representative. And those calls made a difference. It pulled Democrats who, for whatever reason, had gone off the edge. It pulled them back. And that's important, right? People still have a voice. You can still have an impact. You can still get people to do what you think is right, particularly those people who represent you. And so that is important. The bill did pass. I will say, those 15 Democrats who decided to continue to support it went along with Republicans to pass this bill that would essentially go after nonprofits and eliminate them. It will go to the United States Senate now, so rest assured it will not make it past the United States Senate. Chuck Schumer will not allow such a bill to pass in the Senate, so it's going nowhere. But it is important for us to remember, one, that we still have power and that our voices continue to matter in terms of holding people to account, and then secondly, that this bill will come back up in the new Congress, and so we just need to pay attention to what's happening and making sure that we're staying engaged. So there's certainly, that was one I wanted to just update folks on. There's certainly lots more challenging things in the news that maybe we can get to a little bit later on. But we have some great conversations to have on the show today. We are going to be joined when we come forward by our friend, the founder and principal of Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies, Cornell Belcher. We're going to break down some of what the sort of loud talking is about what happened on Election Day, who showed up, who didn't show up. We're going to talk a little bit about some new polling that is out that's helpful in understanding Black voters and all voters to some degree. And we're going to talk about what I've been saying is total nonsense coming out of the Democratic Party about how they need to rebuild, or who they need to include in the rebuilding of the Democratic Party. So we're going to get into all of that. I hope that it will be fascinating as it has been for me to look at all the data that's been coming out, but will be fascinating to you. We're going to get into all that with Cornell Belcher when we come forward here at KBLA Talk 1580. This is the Black Pack. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right, so we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
When you choose Gillette, you choose the best a man can get. Close and smooth shaves, award-winning beard care, and a gentle trim below the belt. And this November and December, every Gillette purchase supports Movember in the fight against prostate cancer. Choose Gillette and make a difference. Shave down and stand strong with the 1 in 8 men who will be diagnosed with prostate cancer. Visit pggoodeveryday.com/Movember for details. Exclusions apply.
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
You've got a Pepto predicament, moviegoer.
Hey, I can hear your stomach grumbling.
Sorry, I ate that entire tub of popcorn with extra butter.
You overdid it, and now your movie has turned into a blockbuster bellyache. Undo it with Pepto.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Pepto chewables provide fast 5-symptom relief, so you can focus on the action on the big screen instead of in your stomach. When you overdo it, undo it with Pepto. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
An official message from Medicare.
Medicare plans change from one year to the next. And this year, it's important for you to review your current coverage and compare all your options during Medicare open enrollment. Compare health plans, drug coverage, and costs. See if you can save some money, and don't forget to make sure your drugs are covered. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Visit Medicare.gov or call 1-800-MEDICARE.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
You don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
You are listening to the Black Pack, and I love that. We can't handle your black talk on the Black Pack, and we appreciate you listening in. We are joined by our good friend Cornell Belcher, political strategist, founder and principal at Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies, to talk about, Cornell, I feel like it's been fascinating watching the story change, right, on this election, even from before Election Day, right? The sort of narrative change, and certainly after on election night, the one thing that I actually had to turn the news off on election night because I felt like the folks on cable news, including where MSNBC, where you're a political analyst, I felt like there was just like this unhinged sort of environment that had taken over about this huge landslide that was taking place, right? And it was unbelievable, and it was a blowout, right? And over the days, I guess, since Election Day, the picture is actually a little different, right, than that first night of people like pulling their hair out. And so I want to start with just with you talking about what we know now about what actually happened. Who showed up in the election? Who didn't show up in the election? Was it a huge blowout, or was it not, and something much closer to what we've seen in the past? But what do we know now when as you're sort of analyzing what happened on election night to today? How should we understand what actually went down?
Well, we should understand that the answer to your previous question is reincarnated, which is probably going to be Song of the Year off of Kendrick's new album. Mm-hmm. So that was, you didn't ask me.
I'm sorry, I forgot. I know you're a jazz man. So I wasn't sure if I should ask you about Kendrick's album, but now I know.
Hip hop is jazz. I mean, come on.
Well, okay, yes, okay. All right. Andy says maybe.
Sorry. Well, at its finest it is. But anyway, look, I think there was a lot of quick hot takes directly after the election, and a lot of people pushing their own interest in defining what happened in the election. As you and I talked about before, is this is an election where, one, you have about 6 million Biden voters who who didn't re-engage, right? So you had two things happening, creating almost a perfect storm for Donald Trump. One is you had an absolute surge of white vote, right? And this is not I want to level set for our listeners because as a group, right, the share of white voters as a population, they're not growing, right? The white population in this country is not growing. Much of our political polarization that's happening right now, I think Adrianne and I would both argue, comes from the fact that the white population in this country is shrinking and the brown population is growing, right? So every 4 years, that population, right, the share of the election that is white should shrink about maybe two points. If in fact, whites and blacks are turning out at relatively the same rate, although black and brown voters always turn out at a lower rate, except for 2008 and 2012, where blacks actually came out at a higher rate.
Right.
So level set for there. So if you go back to 2008, Adrianne, the share of the white population as a share of the white electorate was 74%. Right. Go to 2012, it was 72%. So you see the trend line. Go to 2020, and the share of the white vote, the share of the electorate that was white was 67%. Now, okay, so you would think that the next share of the white electorate, if all things being equal, should be roughly maybe 66%, maybe even 65% of the white the electorate be white. What you had, Adrianne, is quite frankly a reversal of that trend line in a way that if you asked me, could that have reversed before the election, I would say it could, but it's not probable, right? So you had 71% of the electorate in 2024 was white. So we actually going.
Wait, what was that number? What was that number again, Cornell? You said it was
71% of the electorate was white, compared to 67% in 2020.
Right. And back to 72%. You said in 2012. 2012.
In 2012, it was 72%. And it was 71 in 2016.
Right.
So you had something amazing happen in that Trump and Republicans were able to grow the white electorate, right? So Trump, in the end, he's got about 2 million more white votes in 2020 than he did in 2024. Now, stay with me because this is math, and I know math gets tricky, but your folks are smart.
Yes.
So at the same time as you had Trump garnering about 2 million more white votes, he grew the white electorate. You had about 6 million less black and brown votes.
Right.
So at the same time, he was surging his electorate, that white electorate. And by the way, you don't grow and surge, right? A shrinking group of voters to overperform, and particularly non-college white voters who grew dramatically as a share of the electorate when they're not growing as a share of the overall population. You didn't grow that simply because of the price of eggs, right? So a lot of the analysis that, this is about the price of eggs. I have so many problems with that because I think it's one of it. It's almost inauthentic, right? Because you can't possibly believe that he grew the share of the white electorate in a way that Mitt Romney didn't, John McCain didn't, George Bush didn't, because of the price of eggs, right? So that's one thing.
Well, his closing argument wasn't about the price of eggs, right? His closing argument was about racism, and so I think just to make sure I understand what you're saying about the importance of the white share of the electorate is that you have the white share of the electorate shrinking every election over the last
as they shrink as a part of the population, yes.
Right, as a U.S. And so their share of the electorate is shrinking over the last decade or so, except for this time it doesn't shrink; it actually grows. Right, and so the sort of like it should have gone down again, considering their shrinking share of the population, but instead they get a surge, right? They get a surge of white voters, and I think the argument that you're making is it makes sense to me that it wasn't just the cause of that surge in white participation was not simply about economic anxiety, right? Which is what we heard before the election, what we heard in the immediate aftermath of the election, and which we continue to hear even now from the Democratic Party, that the results of the election were about economic anxiety. And the thing that I'm saying, which is, that wasn't his argument at the end of the campaign. His argument was not about the economy. His argument was about, the man held a racist Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden. That's not economic anxiety. That is anxiety around Black and brown people.
Well, Adrian, he went further. That he started with racism and he ended with racism, right?
Yes.
And what I would simply say to some of my progressive friends, right? They're eating your cats and dogs is not an economic argument.
Right. Yeah.
So some of this, and after every election where Democrats don't do well. By the way, I also point out to folks that over the last decade, Democrats have been doing a lot better than not in elections, right? Over the last decade or so, certainly better than Republicans have. So this ideal that now all of a sudden we have to dramatically change and shift everything that we've been doing and building out. And go in a dramatically different direction. And what is that dramatically different direction that they're arguing for, Adrian? They're arguing for a dramatically different direction. It means less really engagement on Black and brown audiences. And as we hear again, more conversation about we just have to do better among non-college white. I'm gonna give you two more statistics but real quickly here because I know because I think it's important, right? So Biden won 32% of non-college white voters in 2020 on his way to winning a resounding victory. You know what percentage of non-college white voters Harris won?
What?
Again, she won that 32% of
the same 32%
non-white college voters. Yeah. So and by the way, it's not like that number's been moving up, right?
Yeah.
And if you go back to Hillary, if you go back to 2016, it is roughly 30% of non-college white voters, right? So we are not garnering a third of non-college white voters, and that's not going to dramatically shift.
Well,
so part of the conversation is, should we do better among non-college white voters? Yes, but at the same time, should all of our attention be going after Trump voters, or should some of our attention be like, Adrian, what the hell happened to those 6 million brown voters who didn't show up? How come they're not put at a premium, and we're not debating about how do we engage them different?
Right. Well, this is. I do want to talk about this a little bit more because I do think that there's this. So you won 32% of that segment of the electorate when Biden won, and when he won, you didn't have an entire postmortem about how you didn't win more of them. That wasn't the conversation, right?
No,
so, but I do want to. I know that this just a little bit more on the turnout and where, the sort of who stayed home and who turned out. We were talking the other day about the fact that Vice President Harris actually added votes in places, right? In places that I think that, people maybe didn't expect, right? And weren't necessarily paying attention to. We know that there was some loss of votes in places like Pennsylvania and in Michigan, but we also know that she actually won more votes than Joe Biden did in states like Georgia and North Carolina. Right. And so how should we be thinking about that? Right. Like that means that the Democratic nominee actually won more votes in some places that are actually still remain battleground states, even though, Democrats try and write them off sometimes. They remain battleground states and we're adding there while we're losing in some of the other key, the sort of blue wall states. How should we think about the fact that reality that she actually did better in some places?
Well, it's got a level set, right? And it is right. You would think that there was some overwhelming, majority that just overran and broke for Trump. Look, in the end, we're going to have about 7 million or so less voters in 2024 than we had in 2020, right? So it's a dramatic difference, sort of, in overall turnout. And in the end, he's going to have about 2 million more votes that he had in 2020. So not from a macro standpoint, it's not a dramatic shift in his overall support. Though again, elections are won at the margins, and it's a game of inches. So if you go in the battlegrounds and you look in the battlegrounds, you know, she is off from a raw vote standpoint, right? She is off. She's off. You know, 60,000 votes here, 80,000 votes there, 30,000 votes there, right? It is a game. It is a game of inches, just like 2020 was a game of inches, right? Remember what Biden won Georgia by in 2020. Remember what he won Arizona
11,
by?
11,000 some votes. Yeah.
Right. So you switch 40,000 votes here, or move 50,000 votes there. And it is different in every state. So, I mean, the map is awfully red. They all broke his way. But it is not a sea change election, and we still have to sort of kick ourselves at their ability to look. And when the other side does something right, as look, Adrian, I both campaign professionals, right? I'm going to take off sort of the partisan hat and the fact that they are authoritarianism and their white nationalism on the rise. But from just a pure campaign standpoint, they saw 2020 and they adjusted. They did what a campaign's supposed to do. So they got more voters. They got more white votes out. They got more rural votes out.
Right.
And while they held the margins in most of and look at the rings around Atlanta. Look at the rings around Atlanta. Not a lot dramatically shifted from 2020 to 24. In fact, she did a little bit better in some of those rings around Atlanta than Biden did. But Trump did dramatically better. They did a dramatically better job of touching, engaging, and bringing out their rural voters.
Yep. Okay, I wanted to talk about this a little bit more. I also want to talk about some new Black Pac polling that is out, conducted by you, of course. When we come forward, we have a lot to talk about in this conversation. Stay with us.
More of the Black Pac with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Diddy appeared in a New York court Friday seeking release on a $50 million bond as he awaits trial for sex trafficking and racketeering. A decision is expected next week. Wall Street is closing higher to end a positive week. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 426 points to 44,296. The S&P 500 rose 20 points to 59,69. The Nasdaq gained 31 points to 19,003 points. Los Angeles is a step closer to becoming a so-called sanctuary city. It formally establishes a policy preventing the city from helping federal immigration officials with roundups or other actions aimed at illegal immigrants. The ordinance still needs a second vote because of amendments and then Black Mayor Karen Bass's signature for approval. And a new mural honoring the legacy of former Black D.C. Mayor Marion Barry will be unveiled this weekend. A ceremony to dedicate the mural will be held tomorrow at the Marion Barry Jr. building. Get BIN News 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Over in Echo Park, watch for a 15-minute backup from 4th Street as an accident's on the right shoulder of the 101 North before Glendale Boulevard Union Avenue split. A stall blocks the carpool lane of West Covina's 10 East before Villa Verde with heavy traffic flow in the area. Back in Hollywood, an accident's in the center divider now on the 101 North before Highland Avenue. Hollywood Bowl split with stop traffic over 20 minutes from Santa Monica Boulevard. In Long Beach, watch for a stall blocking the second lane from the left of the 91 East at Cherry Avenue with stop traffic over 35 minutes from Main Street. And in Anaheim, a traffic break has all lanes temporarily closed to clear some glass debris on the 91 West before Harbor Boulevard, and stop traffic is coming from Highway 57.
Only at Lowe's, MVP's Pro Rewards members can get a volume discount on eligible orders as low as $1,500. Discount on eligible products only and reflected in quote. Restrictions apply. See Pro Desk for details. MVP's Pro Rewards program subject to terms.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
UCLA is facing a must-win situation Saturday night in their rivalry game against USC at the Rose Bowl. The Bruins are 4-6 with 2 games remaining. If they lose to USC, the Bruins will miss out on playing in a bowl game. NCAA rules require 6 wins to be bowl eligible. USC at 5-5 becomes bowl eligible with a win Saturday. The NBA and NFL has issued warnings to all their players to upgrade their home security systems after a recent rash of home burglaries. In the past 2 weeks, the homes of Kansas City Chiefs players Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes have been robbed. Home invasions also occurred in the properties of of NBA players Bobby Portis of the Milwaukee Bucks and Mike Conley of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Tomorrow night at 7 here on KBLA, join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough for Out of Bounds. 60 minutes of sports chatter with some flavor. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Pick up the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
Have you heard of the 50-30-20 rule? This can help you spend and save your money wisely. So, how does it work? Distribute your dollars into 3 buckets. 50% towards needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% goes to savings. Use this tool to help your journey to financial success. Sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
Become a U.S. citizen with the help of the Los Angeles Public Library. Get free and confidential information on immigration and citizenship. Visit lapl.org/NAI to find your nearest library or call us at 213-228-7390. That's lapl.org/NAI or 213-228-7390 and start your path to becoming a U.S. citizen with the help of the Los Angeles Public Library. Call 213-228-7390 or visit lapl.org/NAI.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
Twice emotional stability, a sound body and tranquility. I deserve it all. Like mines and less enemies. Stock investments, more entities. I deserve it all. VVS's white diamonds, GNX with the seat back reclining. I deserve it all. Put my homes on a beachfront. Flying private, what you eat for lunch. I deserve it all. The respect and the accolades.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to the Black Pack and Kendrick Lamar. I know this is talk radio, but I just want to listen to the album. I love it. I love it. I love it. So we are back with Cornell Belcher, our friend and pollster. And Cornell, we just got some new data back from a poll that Black Pack did after the election. And there's some interesting things in the poll, right? And I think a little bit to the conversation that we were just having about, Trump surging white voters, right? And that the white share of the electorate actually grew when it really should have shrank some. I'm asking you to tell me what you think is most interesting, but this piece was interesting to me, so I want to just lift it up for a second because I think it connects back to what we were talking about. We asked this question about, because there was a lot of, back and forth about, how much black voters support the vice president, and do they support her, or are they just voting against Trump? And I think that we we asked that question. And I think that what we saw with black voters was, in fact, a lot of support for the vice president. It wasn't just a vote against Trump. People really liked what she was putting out there, and they voted for that, right? But white voters, their intensity of support for Donald Trump was even greater, right, than the black voter support for Kamala Harris. And it's, and again, I think this goes back to the whole, economic anxiety question, is that people liked what he was saying, right? Like, they voted for what he was putting out there, and it's pretty clear what he was putting out there. But I think I think I'm getting that right in terms of what we saw around that particular question.
Yes, overwhelmingly 77% of Trump's voters in our battleground states, which not national, but in our battleground states, 77% of Donald Trump voters said that their vote was mainly to support Donald Trump. Only 17% said it was against Harris. On the other flip side of that, over a third, 36% of Harris voters said their vote was mainly a vote against Donald Trump, while 60% said it was a support Harris. So there was, in fact, broadness and more intensity about him and what he was selling. And so you're right. Look, again, I know a lot of our friends want to not dive into it, but you made a very good point. He closed his election with a white supremacist rally at Madison Square Garden. And we know that the Southern strategy, for most of our viewers, listeners, hope they understand, Southern strategy is really about driving racial anxiety as a wedge issue. The Southern strategy still works in this country.
Yeah. So a couple of other things from the poll. Let me ask you, because I have questions and want to get your thoughts on some of the things that the top lines from the poll. But what were your biggest takeaways before I get into my questions?
My biggest takeaways is, and look, as a social scientist, I always want to step back from the data and not personalize it. But when you ask African American voters about they're thinking about the outcome of the presidential election, right, and what describes the way they feel about Donald Trump winning again, and the top two responses is 1, disappointed, 2, afraid, and 3, angry, right, and that you have almost a quarter of African American voters in the battleground states who now feel afraid, Adrianne.
Yeah, right.
That's stuff that harkens back to, and I got to tell you again, as a social scientist, I don't want to make it. You try not to personalize it in this thing, but I got to tell you, I've never been afraid in this country, right? I've never been afraid of what's happening in this country. I understand this data.
Yeah, in a real way, in a personal way. Yeah. I think that also speaks to what we heard from in the poll when we asked the question, what issues did you take into the polls with you, right? So what were the issues that motivated you to go to the polls and cast your ballot, and for black voters is mostly casting their ballots for Kamala Harris. And I think I might get this wrong, but I think I'm getting this right. The top 2 answers for black Americans in terms of what are you voting for, the number 1 answer was safeguarding democracy, so protecting democracy and our rights, and the number 2 answer was combating racism and discrimination. So if those were the top 2 answers for black voters in the battleground polls, protecting democracy and our rights and fighting against racism, then yeah, if the outcome is a Donald Trump reelect, then yeah, that would make people scared, I think.
Right. I bet you connected the dots on that. I also want to make this point about the data, and this is something that I think Donald Trump and Republicans did well, is that they muddied the water on democracy.
Yes.
Because you remember in going into the last midterm election, the President Biden gave the speech about democracy and sort of infused the democracy into the conversation, and that was a dominant important issue for for Democrats in the midterm. They didn't allow that to happen now. So what you have is that voters broadly, even sort of Republican voters, also looked at safeguarding democracy and protecting rights as a top issue concern for them. But somehow I think they were looking at it differently than African-American voters.
Well, yeah, because there just been a ton of lies, right, about that help to frame or to shape or to form people's understanding about what the threat to democracy was. And if you listen to Fox News all day or whatever weird podcast that people listen to, right, they believe that, that there's fraud in our elections and that, people are voting who shouldn't be voting, and that's the democracy they're trying to protect, a thing that actually wasn't even happening. Right, versus the sort of undermining of core democratic. Anyway, you know what I mean. So I don't want to get on a soapbox, but like we're talking about two different things, right? The country is talking about two different things.
But I think it's even more nefarious than that, because that's what the conversation about woke and DEI come in, right? Yes. And all these other things, right? This wokeness and this DEI stuff and all this reverse discrimination, right? That's a threat to their rights, and that's a threat to democracy. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also because that also came up in the poll too, right? Like the degree to which white voters believe that there is, reverse discrimination happening in the country with no evidence to the fact, to that fact, right? Zero evidence. The only thing that there is it being repeated over and over again on the whatever media they consume, but no facts to bear that out. Well, anything else from the poll? I want to get in a lot before we head into a conversation about the sort of what you were talking about earlier about the way in which the Democratic Party is approaching the outcome of the election and the things that they are saying that needs to happen. But anything else from the poll that stood out to you?
The other thing that sort of stood out to me, and again, it is just bracing for what I think the African American community and why you see so much angst in the African American community right now is because also one of the top negative things they think are going to be the consequences of the Trump election. What's going to be the consequence of Trump's election? The top of that is more racial profiling, right? Less accountable and bad behavior by cops, followed by defunding public schools, banning books and Black history, which they're already trying to do, and more acts of racially motivated violence and hate crimes, so Black people are anxious right now for a reason.
Yes, because all these are all anxious around the things that he said he was going to do, right? Like we're not making this up, right? Yeah. All right. I want to lean in a little bit on that, and then I want to talk about the Democratic Party doing what they typically do, which is just melt down for no apparent reason on the other side. So stay with us. We're going to finish up this conversation with Cornell Belcher when we return. This is the Black Pack. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
With reported hate crimes rising in recent years, California has responded through outreach efforts across state government and in collaboration with community-based organizations for the launch of CA versus Hate. This non-emergency, multilingual hate crime and incident reporting hotline provides an anonymous reporting option for victims and witnesses of hate acts, reported in 15 different languages through the online portal and in over 200 languages when calling the hotline. Report anonymously by calling 833-866-4283, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or online at any time at cavshate.org.
This season, Chevy brings classic pairings, cookies and milk, mistletoe and kisses, and your holiday plans and a new Chevy. Silverado 1500 gives you power and capability with 430 pound-feet of torque to haul your holiday tree. Equinox EV and the all-new Equinox offer award-winning quality and style to see you through the holiday season. See why Chevy makes everything better and brighter. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
An official message from Medicare.
Couple more minutes and we'll start this month's book club. You know, I usually love a plot twist, but this year, I'm comparing my options during Medicare open enrollment.
You can't assume your current health or drug plan is the best one for you.
And you gotta make sure your drugs are covered. That's important.
So is saving money. Review all your options at Medicare.gov. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You don't talk to me like that. Don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Adrianne Shropshire, and we are talking with Cornell Belcher, pollster, Democratic strategist, and friend to the show. Cornell, we're talking about some new polling that Black Pack just completed. We also were talking about sort of your analysis of the turnout, right? The sort of trends that we saw or have seen, right, or saw on election night, and then our understanding of what actually happened has kind of evolved since election night. And so there's been a response, right, to the results of the election. There's been a response to I think a perception of what happened on election night that I think people have decided to have hot takes before they actually have any data to know. And so people are saying all sorts of things that don't actually reflect the reality of, the way that the electorate showed up, right, on election night. And so we're getting these sort of stories, right, these hot takes coming out from the Democratic Party that essentially amount to what you said earlier, which is we got to focus on, the white working class. We've got to bring back Trump voters, right? People who have voted for Donald Trump, we got to bring them back. And that doesn't seem to be what the data says at all, right? Like, I mean, part of the reason I ask you the question about didn't Kamala Harris, in fact, add votes, right? Like pick up significant numbers of votes in some key battleground states, is because the actual outcome of the election should not lead people to say the Democratic Party has to throw away their whole coalition and rebuild it, right, based on some misinterpretation, right, of the current American electorate.
Look, it is not very difficult, right? It is, and that's okay. Let's ground this in sort of a historical perspective a little bit, right? You go back to pre-Obama, and actually go back to actually before Obama, and look, I remember 2004 when Democrats, Bush won and picked up and they won the House and the Senate all squarely in Republican hands, and Democrats were talking about how bad things were, and Karl Rove and other Republicans were literally talking about a permanent Republican majority.
Right.
A permanent
that they had. That's what they had. That's what they had. They had
right.
a permanent. Mm-hmm.
That's what they felt.
Yep.
They felt that we're going to have a working Republican majority for a long decades. And then, a guy by the name of Howard Dean became chairman of the party, and I went to work for him. And they came up with this crazy-ass idea about maybe we should engage more voters. Maybe we should actually spend resources and time in some of these so-called red states and communities, and maybe we should build a bench, and maybe we should invest in grassroots. And I know it's crazy, but maybe we should have a 50-state strategy and engage more voters and bring more people in the process. And a crazy thing happened in 2006. The Republicans didn't have a permanent work majority because Democrats took back Congress in 2006, and in 2008, Barack Obama, even before he announced, he talked about building a movement, and part of that movement was to bring in more voters and change the face of the electorate, make the electorate look more like democratic changes. And we had 11% of our vote in 2008 were people who had not been participating before, and they were younger and they were browner, and Barack Obama won that election because of them, right?
Right.
And so move forward into that. And Stacey Abrams said, you know what? After seeing the family members of Nunn and Carter run for state office and just get obliterated, you know what? I'm going to do it in a different direction. I'm going to try to expand the electorate. And there are, Adrian, there is a black senator, Democrat senator, and a Jewish Democratic senator from Georgia today because of what she built, again, within that Dean Obama continuum. Now, what's talking about right now is, by many, is the idea that we need to go in the opposite direction, right? As opposed to trying to always increase and bring in and broaden our coalition and make it more diverse. It is almost as if some within the party put a higher premium on certain type of voters over black and brown voters.
Right. It's almost as if one would think that they put a higher premium on some voters. I mean, it is. I mean, the thing that strikes me is that, when we think about the Democratic Coalition, is like, what is that? What is that? It really is the Civil Rights Coalition. Right? It is the outgrowth of the Civil Rights Coalition. And so it strikes me as absolute insanity that you would have members of the Democratic Party saying we need to throw out the Civil Rights Coalition, right? And bring in the Dixiecrats, right? Like what? That's just it. Am I wrong? Like, I think that's what they're saying.
Well, they're not saying that exactly, but that's kind of what they're saying. In reality, in all the dominant talk, look. Yeah, should we do better among every demographic group of voters? Yes, without doubt. Should Democrats be competing for every set of voters? Yes, they can. They should be, and they can. But here's the hard reality. Hard reality is the electorate that is diverse and younger. If the electorate is diverse and younger, Democrats have a chance. If the electorate is not diverse and older, that electorate is going to benefit Republicans. And what do we have in 2024? We have an electorate that is considerably older than the 2020 electorate, right? And considerably less diverse than the 2020 electorate. And so you have, in fact, surging groups of voters who have not been breaking Democrat. And again, look, I'm calling balls and strikes, Adrian. I'm just calling it like this. Like, I'm just doing math.
Right.
We have not won over. We're not winning over 35% of non-college white voters. We haven't done that, at least on a presidential election, national scale, in a long, long time. Right. So, as opposed to chasing Trump voters, who, by the way, that they're for Trump, they're pretty much rejected you. Why not chase and go, well, we have 6 million voters that we know are Biden voters on the table.
Right.
Why don't we try to get them?
Right. And you would think that would be the conclusion that people would come to, and I'm not sure that they're not going to. I mean, I think that we saw the same sort of, melting down and whining and crying, after 2016 as well. And so this sort of like, we'll see where it shakes out, I guess. But you would think that the conclusion logically would be, we've got to bring back the voters who have been with us over the last 2 election cycles, right? We've got to bring them back in, and we have to hold them in. And those are going to be younger voters, right? They're going to be younger voters. They're going to be voters of color, right? The bringing back in the color. You would think that is what people would end up, sort of as a conclusion, right? As opposed to it feels like what they're doing right now.
Well, yes, a really sort of, biracial, multiracial coalition of voters. Look, Democrats have, if you look at Biden and Obama, it's a coalition where you win roughly 41, a good day 42% of the white vote, and then you win large sums of voters of color, taking again advantage of the changing face of the country, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a diverse American coalition. Mm-hmm. 81% of Trump's coalition is white.
Right.
81%.
Right. Yes. Yep. That's not diverse. As much as they would like it to be. All right, Cornell Belcher, I appreciate you always, both your analysis and the data that you bring. And I we're going to be figuring out sort of the how to move forward and the path to move forward for a long time. So looking forward to as things evolve, like your thoughts and opinion on what the party should be doing, especially as they're about to select a new chair for the DNC and all of that's happening just in terms of the internal politics. So appreciate you and look forward to having you check back in with us as all of this evolves up until January 6th when when they certify the votes, and then on January 20th when there is an inauguration, which also, by the way, if you didn't know, happens to be King Day. So we will talk about what it means for Donald Trump to be inaugurated on King Day on some other day, not this day. But appreciate you. When we come forward, we're doing all the posters today. So when we come forward, we're going to be joined by Dr. Christopher Towler, who is a pollster and principal at the Black Voter Project. Stay with us. We have a lot more to talk about.
I said I deserve it all. I never asked for too much credit, seeking validation just for the aesthetics. I deserve it all. I see you as a human first, even when you didn't understand your worth. I deserve it all. It's innate to mind my business, writing words, trying to elevate these children. That's why I deserve it all. Pray for those who prayed against me. Every reason why my ancestors sent me. I deserve it all.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The president of Spelman College has officially left her post. Dr. Helene Gale announced she would not be returning following a leave of absence. The school has not revealed